I stood there, frozen, staring at the bank statement in my trembling hands. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The numbers didn't lie. For 3 years, I had been sending $300 every single month to my dead wife's mother. That's $10,800. Almost $11,000. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what I discovered when I called the bank that cold Tuesday morning. The money, it wasn't going to Margaret's account. Not anymore. In fact, it hadn't been going to her account for the last 18 months. Someone had changed the account details. Someone had been stealing from me. And when I found out who that someone was, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support means everything to this channel. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. My name is David Cooper, and I'm 42 years old. I work as a high school math teacher in a small town called Riverside. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where people wave at you from their porches, and where secrets don't stay buried for long. 3 years ago, my wife Emma died. She was only 38. Beautiful, kind, with a smile that could light up the darkest room. We had been married for 12 years, and every single day with her felt like a gift. We didn't have children. Emma couldn't have them, something to do with a medical condition she'd had since she was young. But we had each other, and that was enough. We had plans, you know? We were saving up to buy a bigger house. We talked about adopting someday. We dreamed about traveling to Italy and eating real Italian pizza under the stars. But then, cancer happened. It started with a small lump. Emma found it while she was in the shower one morning. At first, the doctors said it was probably nothing. Just a cyst, they said. We'll remove it, run some tests, and you'll be fine. Except she wasn't fine. The tests came back positive. Stage 3 breast cancer. The word cancer felt like a punch to the stomach. I remember sitting in that doctor's office, holding Emma's hand, watching her face turn pale as the doctor explained the treatment plan. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. We can beat this, Emma had whispered to me that night as we lay in bed, her head on my chest. We're strong, David. We can get through anything together. And we tried. God, we tried so hard. The next year was the hardest of my life. Emma went through surgery to remove the tumor. Then came the chemotherapy. I watched the woman I loved lose her beautiful long brown hair. I watched her become weak and tired, so tired that some days she couldn't even get out of bed. I watched her throw up until there was nothing left in her stomach, watched her cry from the pain, watched her fight with every ounce of strength she had. Through it all, her mother Margaret was there. Margaret was a widow. Emma's father had died in a car accident when Emma was just 15. After that, it had been just the two of them for years until I came along. Margaret was 63, a retired nurse with kind eyes and gentle hands. She moved in with us during Emma's treatment, helping me take care of her daughter. You're a good man, David, Margaret would tell me as we sat together in the hospital waiting room during Emma's chemotherapy sessions. My Emma is lucky to have you. I would smile and nod, but inside, I felt like I was dying too. Watching someone you love suffer is a special kind of torture. You feel helpless, useless. All you want to do is take their pain away, but you can't. You can only stand there and watch. For a while, it seemed like the treatment was working. The tumors were shrinking. Emma started to feel a little better. She even started talking about the future again, about all the things we would do once she was healthy. But cancer is a liar. Just when we thought we were winning, the cancer came back. And this time, it came back with a vengeance. It had spread to her lungs and her bones. Stage 4. Terminal. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 4. I remember the last day like it was yesterday. It was a Sunday morning in October. The leaves outside our bedroom window were turning orange and red, and the sun was shining through the curtains, making patterns on the wall. Emma was lying in our bed. We'd brought a hospital bed into the house by then, and I was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Her breathing was shallow and labored. The hospice nurse had told me that morning that it wouldn't be long now. Maybe hours, maybe less. Margaret was on the other side of the bed, tears streaming down her face, stroking Emma's hair. "David," Emma whispered. Her voice was so weak I had to lean in close to hear her. "Promise me something." "Anything," I said, my own tears falling onto our joined hands. "Anything at all. Promise me you'll take care of my mom. She's gonna be all alone now. She doesn't have anyone else. Promise me you'll look after her." I looked across the bed at Margaret. She was crying so hard her whole body was shaking. My heart broke for her. In just a few hours, she was going to lose her only child, her baby girl. I couldn't imagine that kind of pain. "I promise," I told Emma. "I'll take care of her. I swear it." Emma smiled then, just a tiny smile, and squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," I said. "So much. So much." Those were the last words we ever said to each other. She died 20 minutes later, with both of us holding her hands. The funeral was small. Emma had been a private person, and she told me once that she didn't want a big fuss when she died, so we kept it simple. Just close friends, a few family members, and her colleagues from the library where she'd worked. I gave a eulogy, though I don't remember much of what I said. I was in a fog, moving through the world like a ghost. Everything felt unreal, like I was watching my life happen to someone else. After the funeral, people came back to our house. They brought food, casseroles and pasta dishes and cookies, the way people always do when someone dies. They hugged me and told me how sorry they were. They said things like, "She's in a better place now, and at least she's not suffering anymore." I nodded and thanked them, but their words felt empty. Emma wasn't in a better place. The better place was here, with me, alive and healthy and laughing. Margaret stayed with me for 2 weeks after the funeral. She helped me sort through Emma's things, though we both cried through most of it. We packed up her clothes to donate, except for a few special items that we each kept. I kept her favorite sweater, the blue one she always wore on cold mornings. Margaret kept Emma's wedding dress and some of her jewelry. "What are you going to do now?" I asked Margaret one evening as we sat together in the living room. It was the first time we'd really talked about the future. Margaret sighed and stared into her coffee cup. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Go back to my apartment, I suppose. Try to keep living." She looked so small in that moment, so lost and broken. She'd already lost her husband years ago, and now her only daughter was gone too. She had a sister in another state, but they weren't close. A few friends, but most of them had health problems of their own. She was basically alone, and I had made a promise to Emma. "Margaret," I said, "I want to help you. Financially, I mean. Emma would want me to make sure you're okay." Margaret shook her head immediately. "No, David. Couldn't. You've already done so much. Please," I insisted. "Let me do this. I make a decent salary as a teacher, and I don't have many expenses now that it's just me. I want to send you some money every month. Not a lot, but enough to help with your bills and expenses. Would $300 a month help?" $300 wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to cover groceries and utilities and maybe a little extra for anything she needed. I could afford it, and it would give me peace of mind knowing that Margaret was taken care of. Margaret started crying again. "You're such a good man, David. Emma was right about you. If you really want to do this, if it would make you feel better, then okay. Thank you. Thank you so much." And so we set it up. I got her bank account information and set up an automatic transfer from my account to hers on the 1st of every month. $300 like clockwork. It made me feel good, you know? Like I was keeping my promise to Emma. Like even though she was gone, I could still honor her memory by taking care of the person she loved most in the world. For 3 years, I sent that money every single month without fail. I called Margaret regularly too, checking in on her, making sure she was doing okay. Sometimes I'd drive the 2 hours to visit her in her little apartment. We'd have dinner together and talk about Emma, sharing memories and stories. It hurt, but it was also healing in a way. Margaret was my last connection to Emma, and I treasured that. Or at least, I thought I did. About 6 months ago, I started noticing something strange. I called Margaret on her birthday in March like I always did, But this time, when she answered the phone, she sounded different, distant, cold, almost. "Happy birthday, Margaret," I said cheerfully. "How are you doing? Any special plans for today?" "Oh, hello, David," she said, and her voice was flat, emotionless. "Thank you. No special plans. Just a quiet day. Are you okay?" I asked. "You sound tired." "I'm fine," she said quickly. "Look, I'm actually busy right now. Can we talk another time?" And she hung up. I stared at my phone, confused. That wasn't like Margaret at all. She usually loved our phone calls. We'd talk for at least 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. She'd tell me about her week, about her neighbors, about the book she was reading. But this call had lasted less than 2 minutes. I tried calling her again a week later. This time, she didn't answer. I left a voicemail asking her to call me back. She didn't. I started to worry. Was she sick? Was something wrong? I called her sister Linda, who lived in Arizona. "Have you talked to Margaret lately?" I asked. "I'm worried about her. She's been acting strange." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Margaret," Linda said slowly. "David, I haven't talked to Margaret in over a year. We had a falling out." "Why? Is something wrong?" My stomach dropped. "A falling out? About what?" Another pause. "I'd rather not say. It's family business. But David, if you're worried about Margaret, maybe you should drive over there and check on her in person." So that's what I decided to do. It was a Saturday in early April when I made the 2-hour drive to Margaret's apartment. I brought flowers, tulips, her favorite, and a box of the chocolate-covered cherries she loved. But when I got to her building and knocked on her apartment door, there was no answer. I knocked again. "Margaret? It's David. I just wanted to check on you and make sure you're okay." Nothing. I tried the doorknob. Locked. I went down to the building manager's office. A young guy in his 20s was sitting behind the desk, playing on his phone. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for Margaret Harrison in apartment 3B. I'm her son-in-law and I'm worried about her. She hasn't been answering my calls." The manager looked up from his phone and frowned. "Margaret Harrison?" "Yes, apartment 3B. He typed something into his computer and then looked back at me with a confused expression. "Sir, there's no Margaret Harrison in apartment 3B. That unit is occupied by a college student named Jake something. Has been for the last 2 years." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible," I said. "Margaret has lived there for over 10 years. Since before her daughter, my wife, died." The manager shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir, but I've been working here for 3 years, and I've never heard of anyone named Margaret Harrison. Are you sure you have the right building?" I was absolutely sure. This was the building where I'd visited Margaret dozens of times. This was where we'd had dinner together, where we'd sorted through photo albums of Emma, where we'd cried together on the anniversary of Emma's death. Can I see the apartment?" I asked desperately. "Maybe there's been some mistake." The manager hesitated, then shrugged. "I guess I can show you. Jake's not home right now anyway." We rode the elevator up to the 3rd floor in silence. My heart was pounding. There had to be some explanation. Maybe Margaret had moved and forgotten to tell me? But that didn't make sense. I'd sent her mail here just a few months ago for Christmas. The manager unlocked apartment 3B and pushed the door open. It wasn't Margaret's apartment. The furniture was all different, modern and cheap-looking, the kind of stuff college students buy. There were video game posters on the walls and a pile of dirty laundry in the corner. It smelled like pizza and teenage boy. There was no trace of Margaret anywhere. I don't understand," I whispered. The manager gave me a sympathetic look. "Like I said, sir, Margaret Harrison doesn't live here. Maybe you're thinking of a different building? There are a lot of apartment complexes in this area that look similar." But I knew I wasn't confused. This was the right building, the right apartment number. So where was Margaret? I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with questions. If Margaret didn't live in that apartment, then where was she? And why had she been pretending that she did? Every time I'd visited, she'd invited me into her apartment. But now I realized that couldn't have been true. As soon as I got home, I called Linda again. Linda, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Where does Margaret live? Linda sighed heavily. David, I told you Margaret and I aren't speaking. I don't know where she lives anymore. But you knew where she lived before you stopped talking, right? Was it apartment 3B at Riverside Gardens? What? No, Margaret never lived there. She's always lived in that little house on Maple Street. You know, the one she and Robert bought before he died. My head was spinning. Maple Street? That's across town from where I thought she lived. David, what's going on? Linda asked, concern creeping into her voice. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. I hung up and immediately drove to Maple Street. It was a quiet neighborhood with small, older homes and big trees. I found the address Linda had given me. A tiny brick house with a neat front yard and white shutters. There was a car in the driveway. The lights were on inside. Someone was home. I parked on the street and walked up to the front door. My hands were shaking as I rang the doorbell. After a moment, the door opened. And there she was, Margaret. She looked exactly the same as I remembered. Short gray hair, kind eyes, a gentle smile. She was wearing a floral housecoat and slippers. But when she saw me, her smile disappeared. Her face went pale. David, she breathed. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Margaret, what's going on? Why did you tell me you lived at Riverside Gardens when you actually live here? Why have you been avoiding my calls? Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She glanced behind her into the house and then stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. David, please, she whispered urgently. You need to go. You can't be here. Can't be here? Margaret, I've been sending you money every month for 3 years. I've been keeping my promise to Emma to take care of you. And now I find out you've been lying to me about where you live? I deserve an explanation. I know, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face now. And I'm so sorry, David. I never wanted to hurt you. But you have to understand. The front door opened behind her. A young woman stepped out. She was maybe 25 with dark hair and Emma's eyes. Emma's exact same eyes. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe, or fear. Mom? The young woman said to Margaret. Who is this? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom? Margaret turned to the young woman. Sarah, go back inside. Please. Sarah? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Margaret, who is Sarah? Margaret closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, they were full of pain and guilt and something else I couldn't identify. Sarah is my daughter, Margaret said quietly. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Your daughter? But Emma was your only daughter. Emma told me that. You told me that. I know what we told you, Margaret said, crying harder now. But it wasn't true. Emma wasn't my only child. Sarah is. I'm Emma's twin sister, Sarah finished quietly. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The word Sarah had just spoken echoed in my head like a broken record. I'm Emma's twin sister. Twin sister. Emma had a twin sister. My wife, the woman I had loved for 12 years, the woman I had married and built a life with, had a twin sister that I never knew existed. That's impossible, I stammered, looking back and forth between Margaret and Sarah. Emma would have told me. She would have mentioned having a sister. A twin. You don't just forget to mention you have a twin. Sarah and Margaret exchanged a look. A look that said they'd been keeping this secret for a very long time and knew exactly how bad this was going to be. David, please, Margaret said, reaching out to touch my arm. Let us explain. Come inside. We owe you that much. I jerked my arm away from her touch. You owe me, I said, my voice rising with anger. You've been lying to me for years. I've been sending you money every month because I thought you were alone. Because Emma made me promise to take care of you. And all this time you had another daughter? All this time you've been lying to me? Please, Margaret begged. Just come inside. Give us a chance to explain everything. I wanted to get in my car and drive away. I wanted to never see Margaret or this mysterious twin sister ever again. But I needed answers. I needed to understand how my entire marriage, my entire life, could have been built on such a massive lie. So I followed them inside. The inside of Margaret's house was cozy and warm. Family photos covered the walls and sat on every surface. But as I looked around, I realized something that made my blood run cold. There were no pictures of Emma. Not a single one. There were photos of Margaret and a man I assumed was Emma's father, Robert. There were photos of Sarah at various ages, as a baby, as a child, as a teenager graduating from high school. There were photos of Margaret and Sarah together, smiling at the camera. But Emma was nowhere to be seen. It was like she had been erased from the family entirely. "Sit down, please," Margaret said, gesturing to the couch. I sat, but only on the edge, ready to bolt at any moment. Sarah sat in an armchair across from me, her hands folded in her lap. She looked nervous. Margaret sat next to me on the couch, wringing her hands. "Start talking," I said coldly. "And don't you dare lie to me again." Margaret took a shaky breath. "You're right. Emma had a twin sister, Sarah. They were born 3 minutes apart, Emma first, then Sarah. They were identical in every way. Same face, same eyes, same smile." I looked at Sarah again, really looked at her this time, and Margaret was right. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn I was looking at Emma. The resemblance was uncanny. The same dark hair, the same green eyes, the same small nose and full lips. Even the way she sat, with her hands folded in her lap, reminded me of Emma. It was like seeing a ghost. "When the girls were 15, Margaret continued, Robert died in a car accident. It was devastating for all of us, but it hit the girls especially hard. They'd always been close to their father." Sarah spoke up then, her voice quiet. "After Dad died, Emma and we started drifting apart. We'd always been best friends, done everything together. But grief changed us, changed both of us in different ways. Emma became quiet and withdrawn," Margaret said. "She buried herself in books and school. But Sarah acted out. She started getting into trouble, staying out late, hanging around with the wrong crowd, getting bad grades." Sarah nodded, shame written all over her face. "I was angry at the world, angry that Dad was gone. I made a lot of bad choices. When the girls were 17, Margaret continued, and I could see tears forming in her eyes again, Sarah got pregnant. My eyes widened. I looked at Sarah, but she was staring at the floor now, unable to meet my gaze. "I was dating this boy, Tyler," Sarah said softly. "He was 19, worked at a garage, rode a motorcycle. Mom hated him. Emma hated him too. They both told me he was bad news, but I didn't listen. I thought I was in love. When Sarah told us she was pregnant," Margaret said, "it caused a huge fight, the biggest fight we'd ever had as a family. Emma was furious. She said Sarah was throwing her life away. Sarah said Emma didn't understand anything about love or taking risks. We said terrible things to each other," Sarah whispered, and I could see tears running down her cheeks now. "Things sisters should never say. I told Emma she was boring and cold, and that's why she'd never have anyone love her. She told me I was stupid and selfish and that I was breaking Mom's heart." Margaret was crying openly now too. I tried to mediate, tried to get them to talk it out. But the damage was done. They stopped speaking to each other. Sarah moved in with Tyler and his family. And Emma said she never wanted to see her sister again. I felt sick to my stomach. "So what happened with the baby?" Sarah wiped her eyes. "I had a daughter, Lily. She's 8 years old now. The most beautiful little girl in the world. But Tyler, he left us when Lily was 6 months old. Just took off one day and never came back. Turns out I wasn't the only girl he'd gotten pregnant. He had another girlfriend in the next town over. I begged Sarah to come home," Margaret said. "But she was too proud. She got a job as a waitress and rented a small apartment. She's been raising Lily on her own ever since. I help when I can, but Sarah's always been independent. Stubborn, just like her father. I shook my head, trying to process all of this. Okay, but that still doesn't explain why Emma never told me about any of this. We were together for 14 years total, 2 years dating, 12 years married. In all that time, she never once mentioned having a twin sister. Margaret looked down at her hands. After the fight with Sarah, Emma completely cut her out of her life. She took down all the pictures of them together. She refused to talk about her. It was like she decided Sarah didn't exist anymore. When Emma went to college, Sarah added, she reinvented herself. Started telling people she was an only child. And after a while, I think she convinced herself it was true. Or maybe it was just easier to pretend I'd never existed than to deal with the pain of what had happened between us. I tried to get them to reconcile, Margaret said, so many times over the years. But Emma refused. She said Sarah had made her choice, and she'd made hers. And then Emma met you, David. And she was so happy. Finally, after years of being sad and closed off, she was happy again. And I didn't want to ruin that by bringing up Sarah and stirring up all those old painful feelings. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. My mind was reeling. So you just went along with it? When Emma told me she was an only child, you didn't correct her. I should have, Margaret said, her voice breaking. I know I should have, but Emma begged me not to. She said she wanted a fresh start with you, a life without all the painful memories. And I wanted her to be happy. After losing Robert, after all those years of watching her suffer, I just wanted my daughter to be happy. What about your wedding? Sarah asked suddenly, looking up at me. I heard about it, you know. Mom told me. I wanted to go so badly. I wanted to see my sister get married, even if we weren't speaking. But Mom said Emma had made it clear I wasn't welcome. Margaret nodded sadly. Emma told everyone, her friends, her colleagues, you, that she had no family except me. She said her father was dead and she was an only child. At the wedding, I was introduced as her only family. I remembered our wedding day. It had been small and beautiful, held in a garden on a sunny June afternoon. Emma had looked stunning in her white dress. I remembered thinking it was sad that she had such a small family, just her mother. I'd felt bad for her. Wished she had siblings or cousins or aunts and uncles to share the day with. And all along she'd had a twin sister. A twin sister who wanted to be there. Did Emma ever ask about Sarah? I asked Margaret. In all those years after they stopped talking? Margaret shook her head. Never. Not once. It was like Sarah had died for her. And I think that's exactly how Emma wanted it. In her mind, her sister had died the day they had that fight. Sarah spoke up, her voice thick with emotion. I wrote to her, you know, after Lily was born. I sent Emma a letter with a picture of the baby. I told her I was sorry for everything I'd said, for all the mistakes I'd made. I told her I missed her and wanted her to meet her niece. I begged her to forgive me. What happened? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She sent the letter back unopened, Sarah said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She'd written return to sender across the envelope in red marker. That's when I knew she really meant it. She was done with me forever. The room fell silent except for the sound of crying. I felt like I was drowning in revelations, each one more painful than the last. When Emma got sick, I said slowly, did she know? Did you tell her about Sarah? Margaret nodded. I tried. When we first got the diagnosis, I begged Emma to reach out to Sarah. I told her life was too short to hold on to grudges, that she might regret it if she didn't make peace with her sister before it was too late. And, I prompted. She refused, Margaret whispered. She said she'd rather die than forgive Sarah. Those were her exact words. I'd rather die than forgive her. And she made me promise not to tell you or Sarah about her illness. She didn't want Sarah to know she was dying. Sarah stood up suddenly and walked to the window, her back to us. I found out anyway, she said quietly. I have a friend who works at the hospital where Emma was being treated. She saw Emma's name in the system and told me. So I knew. I knew my sister was dying of cancer, and I couldn't do anything about it. She turned around, and the pain on her face was unbearable to look at. I went to the hospital one night, Sarah continued. Late, after visiting hours, I snuck up to Emma's room and stood outside the door. I could hear her inside, coughing. I could hear you reading to her, David. You were reading her favorite book, Pride and Prejudice. I stood there for almost an hour, just listening, trying to work up the courage to go inside. But you didn't, I said. Sarah shook her head. No, because I knew that if I went in, it would upset Emma. And the last thing I wanted to do was cause her more pain when she was already suffering so much. So I left. I went home and cried all night. And then, a few weeks later, Mom called me and told me Emma had died. I wanted to go to the funeral, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I wanted to say goodbye to my sister. But Mom said, I told her Emma wouldn't have wanted her there, Margaret interrupted. And it was true. Emma had specifically told me that if Sarah showed up at her funeral, she wanted her removed. So I told Sarah to stay away. And she did. I thought back to Emma's funeral. I'd been so lost in grief that day, so numb with pain. But I remembered looking around at the small crowd of mourners and thinking how sad it was that Emma had such a small family. If only I'd known that her twin sister was somewhere out there, mourning in private, forbidden from saying goodbye. That's why there are no pictures of Emma in this house, I said, finally understanding. Because seeing her face every day, a face that looks exactly like Sarah's, would be too painful. Margaret nodded. Every time I look at Sarah, I see Emma too. It's been almost unbearable sometimes. But Sarah is my daughter, and she's alive, and she needs me. Especially now, raising Lily on her own. Something suddenly clicked in my brain. A piece of the puzzle I'd forgotten about in all the emotional revelations. Wait, I said, holding up a hand. This still doesn't explain everything. Margaret, I've been sending you $300 every month for 3 years. But 6 months ago you started acting strange. You avoided my calls. You pretended to be busy when I tried to visit. And when I went to Riverside Gardens, the address you gave me, you weren't there. So what's going on? Where has my money been going? Margaret's face went pale. She looked at Sarah, then back at me, and I saw something in her eyes that terrified me. Guilt. Deep, crushing guilt. David, Margaret began, her voice shaking. I need to tell you something. Something terrible. And when I tell you, you're going to hate me. You're probably never going to want to see me again. My heart started pounding. What did you do, Margaret? She took a deep breath. The money you've been sending me, I did receive it for the first 18 months. And I was grateful for it, truly. It helped with my bills and groceries, just like you intended. But, I prompted. But about 18 months ago, I got diagnosed with diabetes. I needed medication, and my insurance didn't cover all of it. The medication was expensive, almost $250 a month. Between that and my other expenses, the $300 you were sending wasn't quite enough anymore. I needed help. So I talked to Sarah about it, Margaret continued. And Sarah was struggling too. She just lost her job at the restaurant because the place closed down. She was behind on rent, behind on her utilities. She was barely keeping food on the table for herself and Lily. I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. Sarah suggested that maybe you would be willing to send more money if you knew about her situation, Margaret said. But I told her that was impossible. You didn't even know she existed. And I couldn't tell you about her without explaining everything. The whole story about Emma having a twin, about their fight, about Emma's refusal to forgive her. So what did you do? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Margaret was crying so hard now she could barely speak. Sarah had an idea. Terrible idea. But we were desperate, David. We were so desperate. Sarah stepped forward then, tears streaming down her own face. It was my idea, she said firmly. Don't let Mom take all the blame. I'm the one who suggested it. Suggested what? I demanded, though my stomach was already churning with dread. Sarah looked me straight in the eye. I suggested that I pretend to be Emma. The room spun around me. I gripped the arm of the couch to steady myself. You, what? Hear us out, Sarah said quickly. I know how it sounds. I know how terrible it is. But just listen. 18 months ago, Margaret explained, Sarah called your phone. But she didn't identify herself as Sarah. She said she was Emma. The blood drained from my face. No, that's not possible. Emma is dead. I watched her die. I buried her. I know, Sarah said softly. But David, you have to understand. I look exactly like Emma. We have the same voice, the same mannerisms. We're identical twins. When we were kids, we used to fool everyone. Our teachers, our friends, even Dad sometimes. Margaret continued. Sarah called you and said, pretending to be Emma, that she was calling from heaven or that it was a miracle or, I don't know exactly what she said. But somehow, she convinced you to send money to a different account. Her account. My mind raced back 18 months. Had I gotten a strange phone call? Had someone claiming to be Emma contacted me? And then I remembered. It had been a text message. A text message from an unknown number that said, David, it's Emma. I know this sounds crazy, but I need your help. My mother is in trouble. Please send the monthly money to this new account number instead. I can't explain everything now, but trust me. Please. I love you. I had thought it was some kind of scam at first. Some cruel person who'd found out about Emma's death and was trying to take advantage of me. But then more messages had come. Please, David. For me. For our love. Just trust me. I know you're confused. I know this doesn't make sense. But Mom needs this. Please. And because I had been so deep in grief, because I had wanted so badly to believe that somehow Emma was still with me, still watching over me, I had done it. I had changed the account information. I had started sending the $300 to the new account number. And then more texts had come over the following months. Texts that sounded like Emma. Texts that referenced private things only Emma would know. Like how I always burned the pancakes on Sunday mornings, or how I talked in my sleep, or how I cried during sad movies. I had convinced myself that somehow, impossibly, Emma was communicating with me from beyond death. That her spirit was reaching out to help her mother. But it hadn't been Emma's spirit. It had been Sarah. You, I said, standing up and pointing at Sarah with a shaking hand. You pretended to be your dead sister. You sent me text messages pretending to be Emma. How could you? How could you? I'm sorry, Sarah sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know it was wrong. I know it was cruel. But I was about to be evicted. David. I was about to lose my apartment. I had a daughter to take care of, and I didn't know what else to do. So you lied to me? I shouted. You manipulated me? You used my grief, my love for Emma, to steal money from me. It wasn't stealing, Sarah protested. I needed it. We both needed it. And you were sending it anyway. What difference did it make if it went to Mom's account or mine? What difference? I repeated incredulously. The difference is I was honoring my dead wife's wishes. I was taking care of the woman Emma asked me to protect. But Emma never asked me to take care of you. She didn't even want you in her life. The words were harsh, and I saw Sarah flinch as if I'd slapped her. But I didn't care. I was too angry, too hurt, too betrayed. And you, I said, turning to Margaret, you went along with this? You let your daughter impersonate Emma? You let me believe that somehow my dead wife was communicating with me from beyond the grave. I told Sarah it was wrong, Margaret said weakly. I told her we couldn't do it. But she did it anyway, and once it was done. Once you changed the account information, I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you forever. I paced the room, my mind racing. Everything was clicking into place now. All the strange behavior from the past 6 months suddenly made sense. That's why you avoided my calls, I said to Margaret. That's why you didn't want me to visit. Because if I came over here, I'd see Sarah. I'd realize what was going on. Margaret nodded miserably. I kept making excuses. I told you I was busy, that I wasn't feeling well, that it wasn't a good time. And when you said you were going to visit me at Riverside Gardens, you panicked, I finished, because you'd given me that fake address years ago, so I wouldn't accidentally show up here and discover Sarah. Yes, Margaret whispered. Every time you visited, I'd have Sarah leave the house first. Then I'd meet you at a coffee shop near Riverside Gardens and pretend I'd just walked over from my apartment. After our visit, I'd tell you I needed to get home and we'd part ways. You never suspected because you trusted me. I felt sick. The betrayal was so deep, so complete. These people, this family, had been lying to me for years. Emma had lied about having a sister. Margaret had lied about where she lived. And Sarah had committed the ultimate violation by pretending to be my dead wife. Show me, I demanded. Show me the text messages. I want to see proof that it was you, Sarah. Sarah pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She opened her messaging app and showed me a thread of messages. Messages she'd sent to my number over the past 18 months. I recognized them immediately. They were the messages I'd received. The ones I'd thought were from Emma. How did you know all those personal things? I asked, my voice hollow. About the pancakes and the movies and everything? Mom told me, Sarah admitted. Whenever you'd visit her or talk on the phone, you'd tell her stories about your life with Emma. And Mom would tell me. At first, she was just sharing because she missed Emma and wanted to talk about her. But then later, when I started impersonating Emma, I used that information to make the messages more convincing. Every word was another knife in my heart. Did you enjoy it? I asked bitterly. Did you enjoy pretending to be the sister who hated you? Did it make you feel good to manipulate someone who was grieving? No, Sarah cried. I hated it. Every message made me feel sick with guilt. But I was desperate, David. I had no job, no money, a daughter to feed. What was I supposed to do? Get a job, I shouted. Ask for help from a charity. Do literally anything except pretend to be your dead sister to scam money from her grieving husband. You're right, Sarah said, sinking back into her chair. You're absolutely right. There's no excuse for what I did. I'm a terrible person. I know that. I turned to Margaret, and a horrible thought occurred to me. How much? I asked coldly. What? Margaret looked confused. How much money did Sarah take from me? I sent $300 a month for 18 months. That's $5,400. But I need to know, was it just the $300? Or did she ask for more? The look on Margaret's face told me everything I needed to know. Oh God, I whispered. There was more, wasn't there? Sarah stood up, her face filled with shame. 3 months ago, Lily got sick. Really sick. She had to go to the hospital. And the hospital bill was enormous. My insurance barely covered anything. I owed $8,000 that I didn't have. My blood ran cold. What did you do, Sarah? I sent you a text message, she said, her voice barely audible. Pretending to be Emma. I said that Mom needed emergency surgery and needed $8,000 immediately. And I gave you a story about how her insurance had lapsed and how she was too proud to ask, but she was in danger if she didn't get the surgery. I remembered getting that text 3 months ago. I remembered the panic I'd felt, the fear that Margaret might die just like Emma had. I remembered going to my bank and taking out a loan to get the $8,000. I sent it immediately, without question, because I'd thought it was Emma asking me, because I'd thought I was saving Margaret's life. So that means you didn't just take $5,400 from me? I said, my voice shaking with rage. You took $13,400. $13,400. Sarah burst into fresh sobs. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I paid Lily's hospital bill. I kept her from getting sent to collections. I kept them from turning off our electricity. I bought groceries. I kept us alive, David. With money you stole from me by pretending to be my dead wife. I roared. I know. Sarah screamed back. I know what I did. I know I'm a terrible person. I know Emma would hate me even more if she knew. I know I'm going to hell for this. But my daughter was sick and I didn't have any other options. I couldn't take any more. I couldn't breathe in this house full of lies and manipulation. I headed for the door. David, please. Margaret called after me. Please don't go like this. Let's talk about this. Let's figure something out. I spun around. Figure something out? Figure something out? Margaret, you and your daughter have been lying to me for years. You've been stealing from me. You've been using my grief and my love for Emma as a weapon against me. I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. But please, David, Emma loved you so much. She would want us to work through this. Don't you dare tell me what Emma would want, I shouted. You don't get to use her name anymore. Emma was the love of my life. And you've spent the last 18 months desecrating her memory by letting your daughter impersonate her. I looked at Sarah, who was curled up in the armchair, sobbing uncontrollably. I want my money back, I said coldly. All of it. Every penny. You have 30 days to pay me back $13,400, or I'm going to the police. I'll press charges for fraud and identity theft. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows what you did. David, please, Sarah begged. I don't have that kind of money. It's gone. I spent it on bills and food and Lily's medical care. I can't pay you back. It would take me years to save that much. Then you'd better start saving, I said. Because if I don't have my money in 30 days, you're going to jail. And your daughter Lily? She'll end up in foster care while you serve your sentence. Is that what you want? The cruelty of my words shocked even me. But I was beyond caring. These people had hurt me in ways I didn't even know were possible. Margaret stepped forward. David, please. Sarah made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But sending her to jail won't bring Emma back. It won't undo what's been done. No, I agreed. Nothing will bring Emma back. Nothing will undo the fact that my wife lied to me about having a sister. Nothing will undo the fact that you both have been manipulating me and stealing from me. But at least I'll have justice. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling my lawyer first thing Monday morning. And then I'm going to the police. Enjoy your weekend. Because it's the last one you're going to have as free women. David and Margaret grabbed my arm. Please. I'll do anything. I'll sell this house if I have to. I'll pay you back somehow. Just please don't send Sarah to jail. Please think about Lily. She's just a little girl. She doesn't deserve to lose her mother. I pulled my arm free. You should have thought about that before you decided to commit fraud. Wait. Sarah suddenly stood up, her face desperate. Wait, David. Before you go, there's something else you need to know. Something about Emma. Something that might change how you feel about all of this. I paused at the door. There's nothing you can say that will change my mind. It's about why Emma really cut me out of her life, Sarah said quickly. The real reason we stopped talking. It wasn't just because I got pregnant. There was more to it. Something Emma never told you. Something Mom never told you either. Despite my anger, despite my desire to leave and never look back, curiosity got the better of me. What are you talking about? I asked warily. Sarah and Margaret exchanged another look. A look that seemed to say, should we really do this? Tell him, Margaret said quietly. He deserves to know everything now. Sarah took a deep breath. The fight Emma and I had when I got pregnant. It wasn't really about the pregnancy. I mean, that's what started it, but it escalated into something much bigger. We said horrible things to each other that night, David. Things we could never take back. I already know that part, I said impatiently. But you don't know what I said to her, Sarah continued. The thing that made Emma hate me forever. The thing that made her decide I was dead to her. She paused, and I could see she was struggling to get the words out. I told Emma that the reason she'd never find love, the reason she'd die alone, was because there was something wrong with her. Something broken inside. And then I told her. Sarah's voice broke. I told her that I was glad she couldn't have children. I said she'd be a terrible mother anyway because she was cold and heartless. The room went silent. You said that to your sister? I asked, horrified. When you knew she was devastated about not being able to have kids? Sarah nodded, crying. I was 17 and angry, and I wanted to hurt her as much as possible. And I succeeded. I saw her face when I said it, David. It was like I'd killed her. From that moment on, she looked at me like I was nothing. Like I was less than nothing. But that's still not the worst part, Margaret added quietly. I looked at her. What do you mean? After Sarah said that, Margaret continued, Emma said something back. Something that haunted her for the rest of her life. Something she made me swear I'd never tell anyone, especially not you. My heart was pounding now. What did she say? Margaret closed her eyes, as if the memory was too painful to face. Emma told Sarah that she wished it had been Sarah who died instead of their father. She said the world would be better off without Sarah in it. And then she said, Margaret's voice broke, and she had to take a moment before she could continue. She said that she hoped Sarah's baby would die too. She said she hoped Sarah would feel the same pain Emma felt about not being able to have children. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That didn't sound like Emma. That didn't sound like the kind, gentle woman I'd married. Emma would never wish death on anyone, especially not a baby. Would she? You're lying, I said. Emma would never say something like that. I'm not lying, Margaret said sadly. Emma was destroyed by what Sarah said to her. And in that moment of pain, she said the cruelest thing she could think of. And as soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. I saw it in her face. But it was too late. Sarah had already run out of the house. Sarah was sobbing now. I was so scared, David. So scared that Emma's words would come true. That something would happen to my baby. I was terrified through my entire pregnancy. And even after Lily was born healthy, I couldn't shake the fear. What if Emma's curse somehow found us? What if something terrible happened to Lily because of what Emma had said? That's why, Margaret explained. Emma felt so guilty. That's why she could never forgive Sarah. Because she couldn't forgive herself for what she'd said. Every time she thought about reaching out to Sarah, she remembered her own terrible words. And the guilt would overwhelm her. I sank back down onto the couch, my legs unable to support me anymore. Did Emma ever? I started, but couldn't finish the question. Regret what she said? Margaret finished for me. Every single day, especially after she got sick. She knew she was dying, and she wanted to make peace with Sarah, but the guilt was too strong. She convinced herself that Sarah was better off without her. That she was too toxic, too damaged to be in her sister's life or her niece's life. On her last day, Margaret said softly, when she made you promise to take care of me, I think part of her wanted to tell you everything, wanted to ask you to look after Sarah and Lily too. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. The shame and guilt were too much. I sat there in Margaret's living room, my head in my hands, trying to process everything I just learned. Emma, my perfect Emma, had said such horrible things, had wished death on her sister's baby. But Sarah had said horrible things too, had attacked Emma at her most vulnerable point. They'd both been wrong. They'd both hurt each other in ways that could never be undone. And now here I was, caught in the middle of a family tragedy that had started long before I ever met Emma. A tragedy that was still playing out, still destroying lives. I need you to understand something, Sarah said quietly. When I sent you those text messages pretending to be Emma, I wasn't just trying to get money. I was trying to keep her alive somehow. Every message I sent, I tried to write the things I thought Emma would say if she could talk to you. I tried to give you comfort. I tried to help you grieve. That doesn't make it okay, I said. I know, Sarah agreed. I'm not trying to justify what I did. I just want you to know that it wasn't purely selfish. Part of me was trying to give you something, not just take from you. And the $8,000 for Lily's hospital bill? I asked bitterly. Was that you trying to give me something too? Sarah looked down at her hands. No, that was pure desperation. That was me being a terrible person. I have no excuse for that. Margaret spoke up. David, I know you're hurt. You have every right to be. But I'm asking you, begging you to please think about Lily. She's innocent in all of this. She's 8 years old. She knows nothing about her Aunt Emma or about what her mother did. If you send Sarah to jail, Lily will suffer. What about what I'm suffering? I demanded. What about the fact that I took out a loan I can't afford to help someone who was lying to me? What about the fact that every day for 18 months, I believed I was somehow still connected to my dead wife, and it was all a lie? You're right, Margaret said. You're absolutely right. We can't undo what we did. We can't give you back those 18 months of false hope. We can't erase the betrayal. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. But I can give you this. She handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully. It was a letter, written in handwriting I recognized immediately. Emma's handwriting. What is this? I asked, my voice shaking. Emma wrote it 2 days before she died, Margaret said. She gave it to me and made me promise to keep it safe. She said I'd know when the right time was to share it. My hands trembled as I began to read. Dear David, if you're reading this, then Mom has decided you need to know the truth. The truth I was too much of a coward to tell you while I was alive. I have a twin sister. Her name is Sarah, and I've spent the last 20 years pretending she doesn't exist because I said something unforgivable to her and I didn't know how to take it back. I wish I could tell you that I had a good reason for cutting her out of my life. I wish I could say she did something so terrible that it justified my actions. But the truth is, we were both young and stupid and hurt, and we said things we didn't mean. And instead of being the bigger person and apologizing, I held on to my anger and my guilt until it became who I was. By the time I met you, I had convinced myself that I didn't have a sister. That chapter of my life was closed, and I wanted to keep it that way. I wanted a fresh start with you, untainted by the mistakes of my past. But now that I'm dying, I realize what a mistake that was. I realize that I wasted 20 years I could have spent with my sister. 20 years she could have had an aunt. 20 years you could have had a sister-in-law and a niece. I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you. If the opportunity ever arises, please don't make the same mistake I did. Please don't let anger and hurt turn into years of regret. Please forgive people when they make mistakes, even terrible ones. Because holding on to grudges doesn't protect you. It just makes you lonely. I love you, David. I loved you from the moment I met you until my last breath. And beyond that too, if there's anything beyond. Please take care of Mom. And if you ever meet Sarah and Lily, please be kind to them. They deserve kindness even if I was too stubborn and proud to give it to them. Love always, Emma. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. I looked up at Sarah, who was watching me with red, swollen eyes. I looked at Margaret, who looked older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. And I thought about Emma, my Emma, who had been so strong in so many ways, but who had been destroyed by her inability to forgive. I thought about the choice in front of me. I could follow through on my threat. I could press charges against Sarah. I could send her to jail and watch her lose everything, including her daughter. It would be justice in a way. She had committed fraud. She had stolen from me. She deserved to face consequences. But would Emma want that? Based on this letter, I didn't think so. Emma had spent the last years of her life regretting her inability to forgive. And now she was asking me, begging me not to make the same mistake. I stood up slowly, still holding Emma's letter in my hand. I'm not going to press charges, I said quietly. Sarah gasped. David. I held up a hand to stop her. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Lily. And I'm doing it for Emma, because she asked me to. But make no mistake, what you did was wrong. It was cruel and manipulative, and you should be ashamed of yourself. I am, Sarah whispered. I am so ashamed. You're going to pay me back, I continued. Not all at once. I'm not a monster. But you're going to pay me back $100 a month until the debt is settled. That means you'll be paying me for the next 11 years. And if you miss even one payment, the deal is off and I go to the police. Understood. Sarah nodded frantically. Yes, I understand. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. And one more thing, I said, looking at Margaret. No more lies. Ever. If I'm going to have any kind of relationship with this family going forward, and that's a big if, it has to be built on honesty. Complete honesty. Of course, Margaret said. No more lies. I promise. I folded Emma's letter carefully and put it in my pocket. I need time, I said. Time to process all of this. Time to figure out if I can ever trust either of you again. Don't call me. Don't text me. When I'm ready, I'll reach out. Until then, Just stay away. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob, when Sarah's voice stopped me. David? She called out. Would you like to meet Lily someday? When you're ready, I think Emma would have liked that. I turned and looked at her. At this woman who looked so much like Emma but who was so different. This woman who had caused me so much pain but who was also trying, in her own flawed way, to honor her sister's memory. Maybe, I said, someday, but not now. And with that, I walked out of Margaret's house and got into my car. As I drove away, I thought about Emma, about the secrets she'd kept from me, about the sister she'd loved and lost and never forgave. I thought about Sarah, desperate and flawed, making terrible choices to survive. I thought about Margaret, caught in the middle, trying to protect both of her daughters even after one of them was gone. And I thought about myself, about the choice I'd just made. Was it the right one? I honestly didn't know. But as I pulled Emma's letter out of my pocket at a red light and read it again, I knew one thing for certain. Forgiveness wasn't about saying what someone did was okay. It was about choosing not to let their mistakes destroy your own life. Emma had learned that lesson too late. But maybe, just maybe, I could learn it in time. I'm sitting in my living room now, 6 months after that terrible day at Margaret's house. A lot has changed since then. I sold my house, the one I shared with Emma. It was too full of memories, too full of ghosts. I bought a smaller place across town and started fresh. Sarah has been making her payments every month. Exactly on time. $100 like clockwork. We don't talk beyond brief, business-like messages confirming the transfers. Margaret and I have had coffee a few times. The conversations are awkward and stilted, but we're trying. For Emma's sake, we're trying. And last week, something happened that I didn't expect. I received a letter in the mail. A hand-drawn card, actually. On the front was a picture of a rainbow and a butterfly, drawn in crayon by a child's hand. Inside, in careful, wobbly handwriting, it said, Dear Mr. David, my mom told me you were married to my Aunt Emma. I never met her, but Mom says she was very nice. I'm sorry she died. My mom says you are a good man and that Aunt Emma loved you very much. I drew you a picture to make you feel better. I hope you like it. Love, Lily. I sat there staring at that card for a long time. At the rainbow and the butterfly and the innocent words of a child who knew nothing about fraud or betrayal or family secrets. Just a little girl who wanted to make a stranger feel better. And for the first time in 6 months, I smiled. Maybe someday I will meet Lily. Maybe someday I'll be able to look at Sarah without seeing the person who betrayed me, and instead see Emma's sister. Flawed and broken, but still family. Maybe. But for now, I'm taking it one day at a time. One payment at a time. One coffee with Margaret at a time. Because that's all any of us can do, really. We make mistakes. We hurt people. We get hurt. And then, if we're lucky, we find a way to keep moving forward anyway. Emma couldn't do that. She held onto her pain until it consumed her. But I'm not Emma, and I refuse to let the past destroy my future. So here I am, still standing, still breathing, still living, and maybe, just maybe, still capable of forgiveness, even when it's the hardest thing in the world. Thank you so much for watching this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling me what you thought about David's decision, and share this video with someone who loves emotional storytelling. Your support means everything to us, and it helps us continue bringing you incredible stories every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people you love. You never know how much time you have left. God bless.